back in 1975, I decided I wanted to buy me a new car, so I looked around, and it was in the newspaper for sale, a 1968 VW, for $800.
$800.
And so,
go ahead.
And so, I took a friend of mine with me, and we went up to his house up on the avenues, First Avenue. And we looked at the car. We took it for a test drive. Everything was fine, you know. And so later on that night, I decided I wanted it because it was in real good shape, and I didn't want to spend a lot, at the time. And so I decided I would buy it. And while we were at his house,
hey, Paula,
it was real up in the avenues there. But anyway, I came home, and I had went and borrowed a loan from a loan company to get the money to pay for the car. So he decides he would bring the car out to me, and he bring it out here to Sandy, to my parents' house. And I went down to the bank to cash the check to give it to him, and they wouldn't cash it because I didn't have an account with them, so I had to wait till my mother got home from work so she could take me down to cash the check. Well, she ended up working overtime that night, so he had to sit here at my house for like 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
We sat outside and, we smoked a cigarette and everything, and I was talking to my neighbor came home, and he was a policeman, and I walked over to the fence, and I was standing there talking to him, and Ted got real, nervous, but I didn't think nothing of it,
Sure.
Because because nothing like this had happened, or came out or anything. So, anyway, my mother came home 2 hours later. She took me down, we cashed the check, and we paid him. And he took off, and I was driving the car that night down Segalelli here, and I got pulled over for speeding because it's only 25, and the cop just gave me a warning, luckily. Well, anyway, I got pulled over, and he just gave me a warning. So what happened was I only had the car for 2 weeks, and I was going to school. I was going to Hillcrest High School, and then I was working part-time in the evening at Winchell's Donut House up on 2700 South and Highland Drive. But anyway, I came home from school one afternoon. My dad said, "So I got something to talk to you about." I'm like, "What?" And he shows me this newspaper clipping. He goes, "Do you know who this is?" And I went, "Yeah, that's the guy I just bought my car from."
Wow.
And what had happened was, he told me when I bought the car not to register it, to leave it in his name, because what had happened was in 1994, he got pulled over and busted for smoking marijuana. So he gave Beehive Bondsman and Bill the title to the car to bail himself out of jail. Then he turned around and made a duplicate of the title and sold me the car with the duplicate. So then they came out to the house, and they there was four, there was fire trucks, 4 cop cars, everybody surrounded the house, a tow truck, and they towed the car away. And they told me they had this photo album with all the pictures of the car in there, and they're saying, oh, yeah, he changed the back seat, and he's changed this, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I was just, like, blown away because of all the stuff that was going on, you know?
Yeah.
So, I'm only 17, 18, you know, I was young. But they told me they were going to take the car, and they would bring it back to me within 2 weeks. If not, they would furnish me a car to drive until they bring it back.
They ended up buying it from you, didn't they?
No.
Oh, okay. Continue. I'm sorry, man. Continue. I want to hear it.
No, you're fine. So I called Jerry Thompson. I called him, and I said, so what's going on? You know, I says, where's my car? You know, when is it coming back? And he's like, well, we don't have that kind of money to be buying you a new car. He told me, he says, we turned it over to the FBI, and they're going to tear it apart piece by piece and send it to the FBI, you know, and he says, and we don't have that kind of money to be buying you another car, you know, and I'm like, well, then you're going to have to hear from my attorney. So I went down, and I hired me an attorney, and my attorney said, well, legally the car is not yours because, you know, he had gave the title to the bondsman of Bell, which is true. But I had, you know, I went down and I registered it, and the new title came with my name on it legally for the car. Yeah, he told me not to, but my dad said, no, that's your car now, you go register it. So I did.
Okay.
You know, and so the new title came to the house here, and my attorney was like, well, they're saying that the High Bondsman of Bell owns the car. You know, they have the title to it. And I says, well, no, I have the title to the car. It's right here. And he's like, well, you do, yeah. Well, he fought with them for probably about 6 months is what it was. And in this meantime, I had no car. Plus, I'm having to make these loan payments to the loan company.
Yeah.
It was just real stressful on me. That night that they came, they put my name in the newspaper and all this kind of stuff. I had all these clippings, you know, about all this stuff. And years ago, I lived with these two guys, and they were from New York. And the one was, like, infatuated with all this stuff, and he ended up stealing a bunch of my stuff.
Oh, no.
It was really sad, you know. It's like, it has nothing to do with him, you know. I mean,
it's your
why
history.
Did he have to steal it? You know, it was really sad that he did steal that, you know. But they, so about another year went by or something, and maybe it was Mike Fisher. I don't know. I know his name was Mike. He was a detective, and he told me that he wanted me to go to court to testify. He arranged for me to go to Aspen to go up there to testify. That's before he lost all the weight and escaped. It was kind of crazy because they booked my. I told them, you have to book my flight, everything, because you know you're taking my car. I lost my job, you know, all this kind of stuff. I said him this story, you know, and it was like it was the truth. But so he did. He arranged. He says, all you have to do is show your driver's license when you go to the airport, and they will, you know, your flight will be arranged, everything. So they flew me up there, and, well, from here to Denver, and then from Denver over to Aspen. And when I got to Aspen's airport, and I'm standing in there going, what do I do? You know, so I walked up to the security guard guy, and I said, do you know where I'm supposed to go? I'm here for court, you know, and I told him, and he goes, oh, I know where you go. And so he says, let me take care of this. So he puts me in this Saab. Their cop cars up there were Saabs at that time.
Yeah, they still are.
And he,
funny.
And he puts me in there, and he takes me for a tour around the whole city of Aspen. You know, I mean, it was beautiful, and I enjoyed it. You know, but Mike Fisher was like, he was calling the courthouse, going, "Oh my God, I've been at the airport waiting for Bryan, and he never showed up." You know, and they're like, "Well, he's sitting right here waiting for you." You know, and he's like, "You tell him just sit there and wait for me. Don't move." So he came pick me up and checked me into the hotel, and then later on that evening they took me out to dinner, and it was like 4 or 5 cops. I don't know who all they were, but they all sat around, and we had steak and lobster that night, and they were asking me all kinds of questions about the car and everything.
Sure.
Then they took me back over to the hotel, and they took me into this room, big conference room, and there was a bunch of like news reporters, book writers, all these people in there, and Carol Durant.
Carol Durant, yeah.
Was sitting in there with me, and they were asking us all kinds of questions. They bring her in, so we're sitting there going, "Oh my God, I can't believe we're here doing this." You know? She was beautiful too. She really was. She was really pretty. Now, I went to school with Melissa Smith.
That was my next question. I was going to ask you that because you would have been close-ish in age. She was probably a year younger than you, maybe, at Hillcrest.
I think she was, yeah.
Yeah.
I think she was. Yeah.
Yep.
Her dad was chief of police down there in Mayville.
Yep, Lewis Smith. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
now, they told me the only way they could identify her was by the caps in her teeth, because he had mangled her. He was a sick man, a very sick man.
Yeah, he sure.
You know, but on the outside, you know, just to talk to him, you would never ever imagine any of that stuff going on, because he, you know, he dressed very nice. He, you know, was going to school to be a lawyer. I thought, you know, I can't go wrong buying this car from him. You know, boy, was I wrong. You know, but
yeah.
It was just real crazy time in my life, and
yeah,
you know, like the Doors and stuff.
Right.
They did give me one subpoena. I still have it. It's in my storage unit, all that paperwork and stuff. It was like maybe 10 years after that, they called me up, and they asked me if I wanted that car back.
10 years later, really?
Yeah, and at that time, you know, I mean, I had went through so much. Like, people telling me, you know, they would say stuff like, "Oh, you're probably the one that did it," and just blaming it on him, you know. I mean, it affected me really bad, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine.
People are rude, you know.
Yeah.
They can be very, very rude. I don't have any pictures of it. I wish I did, you know. I know when I was in court, now this is something, when I was in court, Theo, that's what I call him, Theo.
Theodore, right.
He got up and he was being his own lawyer. He was being his lawyer up there. And he got up and he handed me these 3 pictures of the car. And he says, "Is any of these, you know, the picture of the car that you had bought?" And what it was is, when I went to I was in high school at that time. A friend of mine took this fluorescent pink fingernail polish, and you know your little windshield washer thing there? It looks like a little bug that the water comes out of.
Uh-huh.
She painted that fluorescent pink.
Okay.
And I'm like, what are you doing? You know, and she painted it. But anyway, in those pictures, that showed up on them pictures. And so I said, yes, this is the car that I had bought, you know. And
that's interesting.
He looks at the courtroom and says, none of these are the car that I sold him.
Yeah.
I was like, that's bullcrap, you know, because why would that show up in that picture then, you know? Because I was the only one that knew that, you know? I didn't say, oh, you know, it's this little pink thing here. My friend painted it on there, you know. I didn't tell him that, you know.
Okay.
But they asked me how many girls had red hair, how many had blonde, how many had brunette did I screw in that car while I owned it. And I'm like, what can you do in a Volkswagen, you know?
You're like, I only had it for 2 weeks.
Yeah. But when they came here and they asked me, you know, how many people I had in the car, and I had to make the list out and give it to them of who I had in that car so that they could get hair samples and stuff from them, you know, but
right.
I give them, got about 2 pagefuls, you know, of names. And, you know, back then I was popular in school and we went all riding around, you know.
Yeah, you were probably showing off your car and...
Yeah, we were having fun, you know. It was really strange. It was an interesting story. It did a number on my brain, you know.
I can imagine.
Just the people talking about it, and you know, when you're 16, 17, 18, you know, people can really influence your life and make some comments and really change the way you look at life, you know. I went through a lot of difficult times, you know, back then, and I got to the point where I wouldn't trust a cop because of what they had done to me over it, and, you know, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't talk about it for a lot of years, you know,
wow.
just because I didn't want people, you know, thinking, hey, he was probably the one that did it, and he's blaming it on this person, you know. You know, people saying stuff like that really affects your mind, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
But,
especially,
you know, I didn't do any of that, you know, and now I'm okay with